how many people in here had, okay, a lot of our seniors had Mrs. Taylor. She's known as a teller of tales. She has a YouTube channel called Telling Tales with Mrs. Taylor. Telling Tales with Mrs. Taylor. Please welcome Jane Taylor.
Well, I really hate to follow Faith. She did an awesome job. Please give her another hand. And Faith, you said something that you felt that you were a nerd all your life because you love to read and tell stories. Well, if you're a nerd, then I'm the biggest nerd ever in this area. But don't ever feel that way. Stories are wonderful. If you give me a minute, let me get all my things. One of the fun things about storytelling, for me anyway, especially after being an elementary teacher, sometimes I like to get dressed up, and I'll explain my get up in just a minute. So I would like to, some of the things that Faith and I were on the same wavelength, some of the things that you're going to hear, I also found out in my research about storytelling. So, let's get started. As we all know, for better or worse, social media has become the modern way of telling stories. It's kind of become humankind's, time capsule. The evolution of storytelling reflects how people learn, communicate, entertain each other, as you heard from Faith. As far back as 30,000 BC, primitive painted art was found on cave walls, depicting rituals and hunting practices of early man in their everyday life. Storytelling, as you've also heard, can broaden your imagination, it can increase cultural understanding, build your vocabulary, sharpen your memory, improve social skills, and make learning easier. You didn't realize that that was all going on for you while you were listening to stories. Most tales were written for the education of children. Many of these stories became known, as you know, as fairy tales. They were created to teach life lessons and to keep children safe. The story of Hansel and Gretel, for instance, was told to scare children from wandering out into the woods all by themselves. Additionally, storytelling helps the young and old listener build empathy, which we heard from Faith, raise awareness of issues in their community and around the world, and learn to understand people from all walks of life and cultures, which you're going to hear about in just a minute with the story I'm going to tell. As a teacher, the favorite part of my day was story time. I even read to my 8th grade students, because as far as I'm concerned, you're never too old to listen to a good story. I think this came off. Hold on a minute.
Here, it's cracking a little bit. Let's see if we can get you.
I probably lost it.
Try one more time. Alright, let's try it over there. We can kind of leave it away from you there.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know. And as far as I'm concerned, you're never too old to listen to a good story. If any of you out there, who did I have? Any of you students? Very good. Okay. If you had me for 8th grade, you will remember maybe how I used to read poetry. I read excerpts from the story of Anne Frank and spooky hauntings in and around Ottawa County. I really honestly couldn't wait for the days when I could hear again. Can I just hold it up?
Just hold it there.
Yeah. If I hold it like that, is that too loud? Okay. I really couldn't wait for the days when you students would write a story and read it then out loud in class. I used to love listening to them and your journal entries. But back to the technology and social media for a moment. During COVID, I was feeling extremely sad, lonely, and disconnected from everybody. As I began to hear, working again?
I'm going to switch you over to the camera. Okay? technical difficulties. Let me unmute that for you, okay? Green light's on. Green light's on. All right, try it now.
Okay. Hear me now? Okay. As I began to hear how during COVID, how some kids were feeling disconnected also, I began to worry about, especially the younger students, did their parents have the time to read stories to them, especially when they were trying to worry about childcare, working outside the home. Then they had to be their own child's teacher, which had to have been really tough. So I figured, what can I do to help out? So I created my own YouTube channel titled Telling Tales with Mrs. Taylor. My husband, who's out there, handled all the videotaping for me, and I just read different stories. I didn't want kids to lose their listening skills and at least be able to hear a story each day. It's still up and running, and my biggest fans are a group of kindergartners from Oak Harbor. They've invited me numerous times to come read to them out loud in person, which is a lot of fun. Now you might be wondering why I'm dressed this way today. Well, it's my way of honoring a group of folks known as the Gullah Geechee people who were brought over from West Africa to the Sea Islands of the Carolinas, Georgia, and northern Florida. The name Gullah is thought to be derived from the word Angola, as many of these slaves originated from that part of Africa, or from the Gola tribe on the Sierra Leone-Liberia border. My husband and I just got back from a 3-week vacation in Hilton Head, and we were able to really kind of immerse ourselves into the wonderful storytelling these people could do. I was able to visit some of the world's greatest storytellers and hear some of the really interesting stories I've never heard before. Because the Gullah people are so geographically isolated from the mainland, they continue to fight and maintain their culture and their very distinct Gullah language, which I don't have time to talk about with you today, to keep their culture alive. They're fighting, you know, people coming in and taking their land and building condominiums and that sort of thing. They're keeping their rich culture alive because they're prolific storytellers. It's been said, and I quote, "It's almost as if you could take a Gullah person and the stories would come tumbling out of them if you shook them hard enough." As you can imagine, times were tough for the early Gullah slaves. I want you to sit back. Now I'm going to kind of mimic what I saw the storyteller do in South Carolina. First of all, I'm going to take my rain stick. She would start by telling her story, having everybody to sit back, open your window, and let the story come in. And then she would take her rain stick, I know you can hear it, order to relax and get the children ready to listen. Have you ever seen a rain stick before? If you were in my 2nd grade class years ago, I had one for another African story that I read. Now normally, the storytellers that I've seen, they memorize their story. Well, this book didn't come quick enough for me to really sit and memorize it, so I'm going to kind of cheat and read out loud to you from the story, but I think you'll get the gist of it. This is called Precious and the Pooh Hag, and I know you're not going to be able to see the pictures, and I'm not going to show them to you because I want you to use your imagination. It was written by Patricia McKissick and Onawumi G. Moss, who's a very famous Gullah storyteller down south. Ooh-wee! Precious had been up all night with a stomachache. Since it was corn planting time, every hand was needed in the fields. I got no choice but to leave you here, said Mama that morning. Now remember, don't let nothing and nobody in this house, not even me, because I got the key. After plenty of hugs and dozens of do's and don'ts, Mama finally left. Remember, do your chores, don't make a mess, don't ramble in my things, and do get your stuff off the floor. That might sound familiar to some of you when your mom leaves. If you need us, come a-running. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, Precious answered. She was feeling like a big girl. Don't worry, I'll be fine, Mama. Now you're also going to hear me read a little bit in the dialect of the people that wrote this book. Before he left, my brother, or her Precious's brother, pulled her to the side. Now you be sure to mind Mama now, because if you let somebody in, you never know. It just might be Cruella the Boo Hag. What? Precious asked. Now brother scrunched up his face. Boo hags live all over, everywhere. But Cruella is the one who lives here on the island. She's tricky, and she's scary, and she tries to make you disobey your mama. Precious held her breath as brother went on. Cruella is strange from head to toe. She ain't too smart, she's got no manners, she hates clean water, she can change her shape, and she tells whoppers. Then his voice lowered as he added, and she'll do most anything to get inside this house. Well, why does she want to get inside? Asked Precious. Brother clicked his teeth. You don't want to know. Just remember this, no boo hag can get inside your house less than you let her in. Then he rushed to catch up with Mama. Now Precious was all by herself. She stood stone still, listening to the quiet, hoping that if Cruella the Boo Hag was nearby, she wouldn't notice her or see that she was alone. What you doing standing like a bump on a pickle? Her friend Addie Louise Patterson's voice boomed through the kitchen window, almost turned Precious inside out. How come you're not helping with the planning? I got a stomachache, and I can't let nothing and nobody inside because, and she sighed deeply, oh, because it might be Cruella the Boo Hag. Addie Louise burst out laughing. Oh, come on. Who told you that silly old stuff? There ain't no such thing as a boo hag. Really? Said Precious. Now she was mad that she had fallen for another one of her brother's stories. You better watch out for little green men from Mars, too, said Addie Louise, and she skipped away. Now, even though Addie Louise was sure to tell the whole county that Precious was a scaredy cat, she felt much better. There's no such thing as a boo hag, especially one named Cruella, she kept telling herself. Now, to pass the time, Precious looked through her mama's handkerchief. Then she tried on her mama's Sunday hat and high-heel shoes, and she was having fun counting all the strawberry preserves when suddenly the birds stopped singing. The air felt thick and cold. Honeysuckle wilted on the vine, and the sunny day took on a dark and dreary disposition. Precious looked out the kitchen window, didn't see nothing. She peered out the side window, didn't see nothing either. But when she went to the front window, there it was, riding in the back of a storm, the biggest, meanest something Precious had ever seen. It had eyes of burning cinder and hair that shot out like lightning. Cruella the Boo Hag is real, and she's one awful sight. Open that door and let me in, shouted a voice that sounded like rolling thunder. The wind whirled and twirled and shook the whole house. Precious shook too, and in a small voice she answered, "My mama told me not to open the door for nothing and nobody." And quick, she dashed behind the curtains and she sang her fear. "Cruella is a boo hag, she's right outside my window. She's tricky and she's scary, but I won't let her in." The Boo Hag howled and threw lightning, but Precious held fast. Louder and louder she sang, "But I won't let her in." At last, Cruella grumbled and sputtered, and poof, she was gone. And instantly the sun came out, the birds started chirping, and the daisies lifted their faces to the light. Precious opened the front window, filled her lungs with fresh airs, and sang her victory song. "Cruella is a boo hag, she was right outside my window. She's tricky and she's scary, and I didn't let her in." While she was still humming, a woman opened the front gate and came stepping down the walk, looking like a runaway rainbow. "Morning to you," she spoke real cheery. Then she took a seat in Mama's porch chair. "Good morning," Precious spoke back. She noticed that the woman wore one pink shoe and one orange shoe. "It's hot as you please," the visitor screeched, looking over Precious's head inside the house. "Bring me something to drink. Tea, some juice, some dirty dishwater will do." "Did you say dishwater?" "I said no such thing. Hurry up anyhow, I'm thirsty." Precious wondered if the strange woman had ever heard of the word please. Returning from the kitchen, she handed the woman a cup of water. The woman flashed a crooked smile. "Now, young'un, let me inside and drink it in the cool." Precious shook her head and backed away. "I'm not to let nothing and nobody in this house." "Huh." The woman grumbled and hissed and took a big gulp. "Water! Oh!" She gagged and coughed and sputtered. One eye went to spinning like a top, and the other started blinking, and her tongue rolled out like a scroll. "I said tea, juice, anything, but never, ever did I ask for clear, clean water." True to brother's word, the visitor was strange from head to toe, had no manners, and hated clean water. "Can't trick me, I know who you are," Precious said, and she slammed the window shut. But outside, the woman grew taller and wider, and she roared like 100 swamp things, "Let me in!" But Precious sang to muster her courage. "Cruella is a boo hag, she's right outside my window. She's tricky and she's scary, but I won't let her in." With the melody swirling around her, the boo hag vanished. But then, Annie Louise came skipping up from around the side of the house. "Hello, Precious," she spoke. Now, she didn't sound a bit like Annie Louise. It looks like her, it walks like her, but it sure don't talk like her, thought Precious, checking to see if Annie Louise's shoes and eyes matched. "I got some jacks and a ball," said the girl. "If you let me in, we can play." told you. I'm not allowed. Addie Louise smiled. Now her teeth didn't look like hers either. Your mama told me I could play inside with you. Precious put her hand on the doorknob. Well, I guess if Mama says it's okay. But then the Addie Louise thing got so excited her toes popped through her shoes. They were big, they were hairy, and they smelled awful. Precious pulled back her hand, thinking fast. She asked all sweetly, doesn't Mama look pretty today in her blue apron? Yeah, truly she does. You're telling a big whopper, Precious shouted. Mama's apron is green. Cruella is a boo hag. She's right outside my window. She's tricky and she's scary, but I didn't let her in. In a fit of fury, the boo hag left, leaping wildly away over the beach like a March hare. For the rest of the day, Precious watched and waited for signs of Cruella the boo hag. As the late afternoon sunbeam struck the front porch, an orangish flash of light caught her eye. It was a penny, all sparkling new. Now, Precious wanted this penny. She tried to lean out the window and get it, but it was too far away. She fetched a broom, but the penny just wouldn't move. She'd have to get it. Her stomach started hurting once again, and now her head ached too. Slowly, Precious opened the front door. Her eyes searched the yard, first right, then left. No sign of Cruella. In a dash, she hurried out, snatched up the coin, and turned to go back inside. But on the threshold, she stopped to look down at it. Ah, no, you can't fool me. And she flicked it over her shoulder. Poof! It was gone before it hit the ground. When Mama came home, she was proud of Precious. I knew I could trust you, she said and gave her daughter a big hug. Later, Precious told Brother everything that had happened. Now, Cruella was scary and she was pretty tricky. I almost brought her inside when she disguised herself as a shiny penny. But, like you told me, a boo hag ain't none too smart. George Washington was on the front of the penny instead of Abraham Lincoln. That night, Precious climbed into bed and drifted off to sleep, humming her favorite victory song. Cruella is a boo hag, she's right outside my window. She's tricky and she's scary, but I didn't let her in. Now, as you listen to her gentle breathing, you need to imagine looking outside the window. You may just see a strange and scary creature waiting to get in. So, make sure you listen to your mama, and things should go well for you. Thanks for having me, guys. And tune into my Telling Tales with Mrs. Taylor on YouTube once in a while if you want to see some funny stories. Thank you.
All right, so we're super thankful for Mrs. Taylor coming in. Some of you raised your hand that you had her. I'm sure she'd love for you to stop by and say hello on the way out. Thank you all for being attentive today. And if this intrigues you, so every person in our speech class, which is for upperclassmen, juniors and seniors, they got to give a red talk. So we're going to be announcing the next round of them soon. If you're sitting there and you're an underclassman, a freshman, or a sophomore, you have the opportunity to take it. If you had 8 to 15 minutes to talk about something you're really passionate about, we heard about storytelling today, pop culture last week, what would you talk about? So think about that, and if you're interested in kind of taking on the challenge in the future, we'd love to have you. All right, have a great day. We'll see you next time.